There we go. And we'll post it on the town website and on the town's YouTube channel. We are going to open this meeting with a regular council meeting, and I believe there will be a public comment period. So if you wish to make a comment, please use the chat function, which
no, we're not having a public
there
comment.
is no. Okay, my mistake. If you have any comments, though, that you wish to be passed on to the council, feel free to use the chat function with me. Everybody who's joining, I will reach out to you to make sure that we have the correct label and name there for the record. And just as hopefully we won't deal with this, but just in case, if for whatever reason we get interrupted in a way that does not allow us to productively continue the meeting, i.e. Get Zoom bombed, we will end the meeting, and I'll disseminate a new login for folks so we can start a new meeting and continue on productively. And just a reminder to everybody out there, this was indicated on the announcements that went out, but the council is going to entertain a motion to enter into closed session. So when we do that, folks will be put back into the waiting room and then readmitted once the council opens back up for open session. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I will.
Okay, thank you. And let me also remind everyone that we would like to request that people mute their video until they're called upon. In addition, the chat is disabled. If you have any questions, you can communicate to the town manager in the chat. And I want to refresh everyone's memory that tonight there was a previously scheduled work session, which will begin after the special town meeting. There is only one agenda item on the town meeting, which is the consideration of this year's contract with Camp Somerset. But as the town manager pointed out, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session in the beginning, then we will come back from closed session, and then the agenda item will be discussed and considered. And hopefully this will all end within 15 minutes so that I can turn it over to our council president for the previously scheduled work session and the agenda for which has been announced. So with that, could I entertain a motion to go into closed session? I see Councilmember Heller, and I see a second by the council president. Mr. Town Attorney, can you elaborate on what the motion needs to say?
Sure, yes. Motion to enter closed session to consult with legal counsel to obtain legal advice, namely use of the town pool pursuant to General Provisions Article 3305B7.
Okay, thank you. Is there discussion on the motion to go into closed session? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? It was unanimous. Mr. Town Manager, I will let you direct how we go into closed session.
Okay, great. Just give me a moment here. So I will place people in the waiting room, and I'll let you know when we're back. So for those logged in, you'll be placed back in the waiting room and then readmitted once the council is back.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. And we will now go to the one item on the council meeting agenda, which is the consideration of the 2022 contract with Camp Somerset. Mr. Town Manager.
Yes, and I will also note that we have Greg Matway here who has graciously agreed to join us. Thank you, Greg, to answer any questions from the town council. The item that's up for discussion is for the town council to approve the town entering into an agreement with the Somerset Elementary School PTA doing business as Camp Somerset to use the town pool and town tennis courts for the summer of 2022. It's my understanding that both the tennis and pool committee have voted on this and recommended that the town council approve the use for their respective facilities.
And Mr. Greg Matway, the most popular teacher at Somerset Elementary School, do you wish to add anything to that?
No, just that we are very grateful that the town has allowed us to use the pool and the tennis courts over these many years, and I hope that can continue. And we're happy to set up any sorts of additional contract items or any requirements or details that you guys need us to do, and we'll be happy to do that. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to work together.
Thank you. Council President Circo, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Matway.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again after all these years. One of the questions before the council is trying to understand the benefit of Camp Somerset to the town. Can you talk about or give any data on like how many residents of Somerset participate in the camp and participate as campers, participate as counselors in training, and what the benefit of the camp is to those children in terms of their development, socialization with other children, perhaps from Somerset Elementary School who are not residents of the town? Just sort of give us that picture.
Certainly, absolutely. Thank you. So, as you know, Camp Somerset was started by Somerset Elementary School parents about 29 years ago. I've had the pleasure of teaching at camp on and off for 25 years or so, and I've been one of the directors for the past 8 years. Every year, I would say that about between 60 and 80% of our campers are Somerset Elementary School students. So that's about 150 students. And while they're not all town residents, I think there's a lot of mutual benefit between the school and the town. And when the school succeeds, I think the town succeeds. And when the town succeeds, obviously the school succeeds as well. Within our camper population, we have about 15% of our students are town residents. As of February 3rd this year, it was 18 out of 135. And then I hadn't thought about the counselors and the counselors in training that have come through our program as well. And many of them were Somerset Elementary School students. We feel that we provide a program that is certainly a lot of fun, but there is academic enrichment. There's a lot of socialization that takes place at the camp. I personally can speak to just the benefit of seeing that first or second grader in the halls while I'm up here in the fifth grade, third floor classroom, but being able to make those connections. So just the benefit from the camp to the school and vice versa has been really very profound in my mind. And I think when we walk through the town to the pool and I think it just really enriches and deepens our connection to the town, and I think there's a lot of great goodwill that goes back and forth in both directions. But for those 18 to 23 30 students that are Somerset town residents. Their parents trust us to provide that programming for their kids, and certainly in a pre-pandemic world, because they were able to send them to Camp Somerset and go to the pool during the day. They were able to go about their work day, and they knew that their children would be well cared for and able to enjoy the pool during our midday visits. So we feel there's a lot of wonderful connections there.
I think so too. Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you, Councilmember Barr. Do you have any questions?
Right. Are the camp organizers or camp directors predominantly from Somerset?
So I am one of two directors. Both of us are teachers at Somerset Elementary School. None of us live in the town of Somerset. We've sought to only hire Somerset Elementary School teachers, some of whom were former Somerset students, when possible. You know, during these 2 years of the pandemic, it's been a little bit more challenging to get our wonderful Somerset teachers to sign on to work over the summer as well. It's been a tough job, but definitely in some years it's been 100% of our staff is Somerset Elementary School teachers as well. So I feel like by providing this employment to them, we also keep great teachers teaching our Somerset Elementary School students, and we keep great teachers teaching town of Somerset residents as well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Heller, do you have any questions? You're muted.
I do. Long ago, one of my own kids who did not go to Somerset Elementary worked in the camp. So I understand. I think it's a great thing, and I'm glad you do it. But my question really is, can you give us historically, let's just say the past 5 years, how many kids have truly been Somerset residents? You said 15%. Is that really the number?
So once again, as of February 3rd, it was 18 out of 135 that we had registered. I am the one who each summer is doing the accounting for the amount that we will pay the town for the non-residents. Most recently in 2019, it had been $4 per child per visit, amounting to about $8,500. But to answer your question, so if we have about 25 per year, I think over the past 5 years, you'd multiply that by 5. And so that's your number, yeah.
Okay. Does using the pool, is that dependent on running your camp?
So it's a big draw. It certainly makes for a wonderful day. It breaks up our day. Last summer, as you may know, we were at Capella Park. No pool use. And it was tough. I mean, we got through it. We survived, no COVID cases. But being outdoors, or being even indoors for that matter, for 6 hours is a lot. It feels a lot like school. But to be able to walk through the neighborhood, get wet, even if it's for 30 minutes, and come back, they are just so happy. And it really is a big center of their day.
Yeah, I often swim down there and I see the kids, and it is delightful to see them, and I can see what the benefit is for them. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Kumar.
No questions from me. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Councilmember Rovak.
Are you guys going to be, is it confirmed that you guys will be at the school this year?
It's not 100% confirmed, and we've tried to communicate that in our language with the enrollment. We've heard somewhat from Ms. Turner that Montgomery County Public Schools won't be doing summer school in the same way they did last year, in the sense that it'll necessarily be in every school, and it'll be as large. So we've gotten definitely some assurances from Ms. Turner that if she's allowed to allow us to be at school. We will be, even if there's some summer school here, safely with divisions between the two programs. And I think the way that things are trending, I'm hopeful that Montgomery County Public Schools will allow community use of school buildings this summer. Certainly, there's community use of school buildings right now outside of the school day. I mean, there's basketball games taking place in the gym, and there's bar tea taking place at our school every afternoon and every morning. So I'm very hopeful. My PTA president, Deb Swacker, and our executive vice president, Jillian Edick, have been asked by me to talk to the town about if in the worst case scenario, we had to ask to try to, gently use Capello Park again, if we would be allowed to do such a thing. I know it was a wonderful, generous gift from the town last summer. I'm hopeful that it won't be the case and that we'll be back in the school, but I don't have a final confirmation on that yet.
Okay. And the school is air conditioned in the summer, right?
Yes.
That will help break up like the heat for the kids that were just at Capella Park last year.
Yes, indoor bathrooms, air conditioning, yes.
And then have you guys had any, or I don't know if this is a question for anyone, has there been complaints or any issues in the past that have come up from the use of the tennis courts or the pool?
Tennis courts, much less so. Certainly when we arrive at the tennis courts and I'm the tennis teacher at, let's say, 10:30 in the morning, there are sometimes parties that aren't aware that we're coming, and we kindly point them to the sign. So it's been a fairly collegial partnership with the town and the town residents, and we reserve the time during the hottest part of the day. So typically people are happy to leave the courts when it's like 90 degrees. But in the pool, we've had to continue to make sure that we're not blocking the pathway across the deck, and just make sure that we're being quiet and considerate and keeping the locker rooms clean and tidy. We have up to 40 to 50 children coming through. So it's work, but we haven't gotten any serious complaints. And if there's been any small issues raised, we've tried to deal with them as soon as possible and really try to, be good guests.
Can I ask one more question,
Absolutely.
Greg, about the tennis program? Is it only for Somerset kids? Do you bring in outside kids just for tennis lessons?
So we offer a tennis class to one of our programs, the seniors who are rising 3rd through 6th graders. And it's a 1.5 hour class once a day for 2 weeks. And so we don't confine that to only Somerset town residents, but the non-town residents are paying $10 per child per day, or I should say we are.
What I mean is these kids go to camp. This is just
Yes.
one thing. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Town Manager, has any resident or guest indicate they would like to speak on this topic?
Not at this time. I have gotten one comment from a resident that said that their children and grandchildren have used the town pool. Actually, it looks like Barbara Condos has raised her hand. It was actually her comment. So may be better just coming straight from her.
Councilmember Condos, please. Please unmute yourself.
I did. I didn't know that I'd be allowed to speak, so I sent a chat. My grandchildren went to Camp Somerset for many summers. Their mother worked. I took care of them during the day. They loved their counselors, many of whom were from Somerset. They have stayed in touch with them, and the counselors usually ask me how they're doing. They loved going down to the pool. I'm sure they would have loved tennis. And I thought it was just a wonderful benefit in the neighborhood to have a place where children whose parents worked. And I'm sure it's wonderful for children that are outside of the neighborhood too. There lots of close by communities that used it at least when my children were. And just as a caveat, my children are now 50. So, but I really appreciated it. I thought it was a huge benefit for the community to have this service available. And I was thankful that they could use the community amenities.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, anybody else?
Nobody else has indicated that they wish to make a comment.
Okay, thank you. Council, are you prepared to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we approve Camp Somerset. Well, first, I move that we find that Camp Somerset provides value to the town of Somerset, and that we allow Camp Somerset to use pool and tennis facilities as requested in their other separate communications.
Steve, I think we are approving Matt negotiating, right? Is that right? We are approving Matt to negotiate with Camp Somerset?
I had, sorry, is it okay if I interject?
Yes, go ahead.
I had put it on the agenda that way. I defer to you. The only reason I had said that is I had given you examples of previous agreements with Camp Somerset, and those are the same numbers that Greg was referencing. But I wrote it that way just in case Ron, to give us a little bit of leeway in case Ron needed to work out the language.
Mr. Town Attorney, does the council have the ability to approve the contract tonight, as always, with deference to your review?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Okay,
And-
so
And to follow up on what Matt said, Matt's presented the license agreements, which, you know, the
because
same
the
language.
way that
we
he
use
wrote
for
that
years.
agenda item was unusual. So, Mr. President, can you continue your motion?
That was it. That we.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
I have a question.
Oh.
Okay,
Discussion.
what's your question?
I just want to, I want to say that I see the value of having Camp Somerset without a doubt. The only thing that worries me, and I wonder if we might discuss this for a moment. Am I muted?
No,
No,
you're,
All right.
we're
The
still
only
in
thing that-
discussion on the motion, so go ahead.
I'm just worried about the, you know, the things that come to us, like renting out the pool for swim teams and so on. And I wonder if this is really going to leave us open. And I wonder what other people, does anybody else think about that, worry about that? That's all. Does Ron worry about it? If I'm the only worrying person, fine. I can handle that.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mayor Sleven, just a quick response to Councilmember Heller, just very
Okay,
quickly.
no,
Only to say.
Voted on, it's been
Yeah.
voted on, and we
Okay, I'll write to you separately, Debbie.
Thank you.
discuss it with her later.
Me too.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And now I am turning over the gavel to Council President Zerko to convene the work session.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So you're turning it over to me 45 minutes late. Just joking. But that means we still have a lot on our plate. I'm going to try and move us along as expeditiously as possible. I'm glad we were able to dig into the pool issue, especially as it has ramifications for some other things that the council may have to deal with in the future. Pickleball, we postponed a decision on pickleball for further conversation. The thought I had here was to basically put this back in the lap of the town residents who are interested in pickleball, to address some of the concerns raised by residents, to develop a plan with a long-range vision that would include where the where the pickleball courts could be located, and cost estimates, and how a pilot would support it, and then come back to us. But I'm just curious what other folks think. And I see Debbie on the screen, so let's start with Debbie. What are your thoughts there on pickleball?
All right.
You're muted.
Thanks
Oh,
for putting me
yeah.
first. I have had so many emails and so many lobbying that I'm thinking of moving. Okay. So I'm not joking. I'm thinking that I'd really like us to have a pilot, an inexpensive pilot. I don't want to construct any wood floors anywhere. I don't want to take away the basketball courts. I think we should have a pilot on the tennis courts. I think we should have, we can set rules, we can do times. I'm not sure how to do that best way. But I think we should have a pilot. And I think a lot of our residents would support that from what I've been getting. Now, I know there's a lot of support, not to put it on the courts, but I've gotten enough input that I think it's a good idea. If we do it, I would like to see us do seriously measure the sound so we understand it. I think Doug can measure sound. He does it with generators. Why can't we do it with pickleball? And I think we should measure the sound of the tennis courts too, just so we understand what the sound is and what it means. And I know tennis players feel their sound is different. It's okay. They're quiet, blah, blah, blah. But, I just think it'd be good for us to understand. So I think we should have a pilot. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And I think a pilot and a pilot at the tennis courts to see what the level of interest in sounds like a reasonable step. We still have to define the details, I would think. Let's hear from Shannon. What are your thoughts on a pilot, especially since you're so close to the location?
Yes, I'm across the street. I'm one of the neighbors affected by it. So as far as I go with this, like part of the problem with doing a pilot on the tennis courts like that is that you have to paint the lines from the pickleball. And so like that is going to mess up the tennis courts. And it will, if that's not the intended, outcome that it will always be on the tennis courts, it does, mess it up, and it costs money and all of the things to try it. I think that the sound issue is really real because I have heard people playing pickleball on the tennis courts and from inside my house, because I'm like, what is that different noise? And you can hear it. And so I think that before we do spend $1, why don't we just like have some people go out and play it on the tennis court and see what the noise level is and how that is before we agree to doing a pilot. Let's just test the noise, because the problem is that there was so much neighbor controversy about the basketball courts and the houses that surround it. But when you're looking at those tennis courts, there is probably double the amount of houses that surround those tennis courts. And some are, like Susanna Goodman is literally on top of the court. And it goes all the way back to the neighbors on Deal Street are matched up with the tennis court, and Dorset. And then my part of Cumberland as well. So, I think that the noise is really the biggest issue. And, I don't think we should start a pilot until we really have a feeling for the noise. And the other thing is that, from my understanding, Montgomery County is not letting pickleball go into residential areas that are close to houses. So if Montgomery County is saying no, they say yes to everything. So I feel like it's a real issue that is of concern.
Thank you very much. A lot of good points there, and raising some good concerns. Kabir,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
I agree with Shannon. I think that, and Debbie, that we should definitely have a pilot. I think that's partly why we were at the conversation at the last council meeting. I think we were keen on figuring that out. I tend to agree with Shannon that it seems, I think Shannon made the point, or someone else, Matt Zapp made the point, that we probably want to pilot this where it's likely to be permanently down the road. And I think there are some serious questions that it's likely to be at the tennis courts. And I don't remember this exactly. Matt Trollinger can confirm. Chuck Find, or whoever was the county official that you spoke with, there was some sort of recommendation of 200 feet or 150 feet from residents. And I think the courts, unfortunately, wouldn't be 200 feet from homes. I think they would be closer than 200 feet. So that would be a question that I would have as just a qualification for future permanent court. And then lastly, I see Bruce is on. I spoke to Bruce yesterday, Bruce Charendorf, who's one of the proponents along with Dennis and others. And he did go by that grassy area by the pool. I think Matt, you did too. So it'd be good to hear from you on your views on that. And if you have any details on that. But he went there and he seemed to think that it's viable as a potential future location. And for the same reasons, 200 feet, kind of tucked away, flat surface already to begin with. It's obviously not impervious, so it would have to be at some point modified. But as a potential future location, it seemed very, viable to him, was his perspective. And I told him that I would play that back to you guys. So those are my thoughts. I think if there's a way to, maybe form some kind of a group or some partnership between residents to take this forward, I think that would prove attractive. A number of folks have suggested that, but it'd be good to hear maybe from Matt on his views on that location and confirming the details from the Montgomery County pickleball person on sort of requirements, if that's if that's useful for the rest of the council.
Yeah, just really quickly, you're right. In terms of when I spoke with the Montgomery County, Chuck Hines is his name, who is basically the project manager for pickleball throughout Montgomery County. He said that was the general rule that they used, is at least 250 feet from any residential property, primarily because of noise. Now, that being said, I think I mentioned at the council meeting, Montgomery County is looking to do a pilot at the tennis courts outside the Lawton Center, which would be a comparable distance to residential homes as what we would be talking about here. So they're exploring it. I suppose you could take that a number of different ways. One would be we could try it too. Another would be let them try it, and we can wait and see what kind of feedback they get. And then as for the area behind the pool, I did walk over there, and for the reasons that you've enumerated, basically, Kabir, I agree that it's a potential long-term solution if we were to move ahead with pickleball. Obviously, there would be some conflict in terms of taking away recreational space adjacent to the pool that might be used for other things. But in terms of it being a flat surface, as you said, one of the things we talked about here at the basketball court is there's the ambient noise from Wisconsin Avenue. And over there by the pool, it's a similar thing, that any house is on the other side of the creek there. And when I measured the noise over there, just as a frame of reference, I measured from basically the fence, and the ambient noise there with the creek was 49 decibels. And it just so happened that some housework was going on at one of the houses nearby. And so I measured it when the construction was happening and not happening. And it was an increase of just 6 decibels, which tells me that the creek really does cover a lot of that noise. So I think from a noise perspective as well, that might be a viable location. Of course, we would have to create a separate entrance and a separate a divider so that facility could be used when the pool's not in session, and perhaps there might be some other infrastructure things we'd need to think about, but in terms of it being a relatively quiet and flat space, yeah, I think it's.
Okay, let me, Councilor Kumar, let me just interject one thing. I think that it's great to be thinking outside the box, but, and I know this is going to be something that you would want to address, Councilor Kumar. If you're going to recommend that whatever group you're going to have look at all these options, make sure that you specifically notice all of the residents around the pool, because I think you would get the same reaction from them that you got from all the neighbors around the basketball court. And I think that, we have a great law that requires that we notice neighbors around construction, around building applications. We don't have that we don't have that in our law for any other kind of changes. And a lot of people would like us to put in the code that we have that for trees, when trees are coming down or being worked on. I guess we do have it for tree removals, but it has been requested from time to time that for tree work that notice be given. So all I'm saying is to add on to what the town manager said, if you're going to charge a group with looking at other possible locations, make sure that it includes aggressively notifying any neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kabir, did you have any other comments or questions?
No, I just wanted to thank Matt and just tell Jeffrey I agree with him.
Yep, and I appreciate Matt. Appreciate your engagement, Kabir, and appreciate Matt going out there and also taking some preliminary noise measurements. Robin, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I have a proposal, but before I get to the proposal, what I'm going to say is that there are too many unknowns and too many variables at the moment for we, our council, to make any decisions on this. And to rattle off some of the variables quickly, I understand that pickleball players are also trying to reduce the noise of pickleball themselves by bats that don't make as much noise when they hit the ball, and also by balls that don't make as much noise when it's hit. So they are consciously trying to reduce noise, and I believe that's going to have some bearing in the future on pickleball. But beyond that, the area by the pool is in a flood zone, and that's going to require difficulty getting it passed, getting approval from the Parks and Planning Commission to put anything there at all, because it is in a flood zone. And certainly we would need to do substantial remediation of stormwater runoff in that situation. And again, these are just extra variables that I'm throwing in to say that there's an awful lot that we ourselves cannot come to conclusion, which is why I'm proposing that we have an expanded work group to resolve these different things and try to decide if pickleball is possible in the town, if a pickleball court is possible in the town. I'm looking at that expanded work group to include neighbors of affected areas, as well as those interested in pickleball, representatives of the tennis community, certainly, of the basketball community too. And I think it should be chaired by a council member, because there are strong feelings in the town about different locations, and having a council member chair it will at least put a person who is neutral in charge. So that is my proposal.
Thank you very much, Robin. I certainly agree with your sentiment that there are too many variables for us, as much as we might like to solve this issue tonight. And I'm happy with an expanded working group. I'm not sure who would set up or coordinate such a working group. Is that something that, can we ask the mayor to?
Well, we can advise the mayor. The mayor can contact us for help too. And the thing is that we don't vote on it now. We'd have to vote on it at the council.
Right.
This is a working session. We're not
Just a
voting on
work
anything.
session. You're
Yeah.
not deciding anything.
But I tend to agree with the sort of the logic behind Robin's suggestion, I think, which you were just responding to, Steve, which is it might be worth, taking a step forward, but opening it up to a broader group to figure it out. I think that makes sense to me. Just so that before you guys look at me or Robin, I just want to flag that the budget season starts officially tomorrow with the first meeting with Matt, and Robin and I are going to be pretty busy with that. So just wanted to flag that beforehand. And that's a pretty important thing, as you can imagine. And at least for me, it'll be the first time that I'll be digging into that. But I think I appreciate the full logic behind that. And if there's a way to bring these parties together, figure something out with all the caveats Robin mentioned for that location and the details Matt mentioned, that could be useful.
I mean, do you think that we should get into the budgeting process like a little bit first and see if we even have any money to accommodate something like this? Because there's a lot of other requests for money and budget that people have. So maybe it makes sense to, kind of, since there are so many questions and things up in the air, maybe it makes sense to, push it back a little and, number one, see if we have a budget for that would be enabled to accommodate this.
Well,
Go ahead, Rob.
we are pushing it back in effect by getting a work group to run at it. Whereas that's a deliberate tactic in some areas. I see this one as absolutely necessary that we do this. But in terms of, you can't estimate the budget until you have a recommendation of where you're putting it, and we don't have a recommendation yet, so we can't really put something in the budget.
Yeah, we could, it could play in a future budget. We would need that anyway, and we can parallel track these, obviously.
Okay, so great discussion, folks. Unless there are any objections, I'll take this for action to work with the mayor and the town manager to explore how we can set up some sort of a working group or committee to investigate options for pickleball in Somerset. Okay,
Perfect.
All right. I see one thumbs up. Thank you very much, Kabir. The mayor graciously agreed to deprioritize the next agenda item on committee appointments and outside organizations. So let's move on to procurement policy. Matt, can you just give us an update there?
Pardon me, sorry. I attached some recommended changes that came from a resident regarding the procurement policy, which we passed. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how much we want to get into it. One concern was related to the affirmation by any applicant that they have the same values as the town of Somerset. And I think Ron and I have discussed and have kind of an easy fix to get rid of that. Some of the other items that are being recommended, while I think they're good ideas, I think do warrant further discussion. If for no other reason that there is an administrative burden and cost to implementing some of those recommendations. But I'll leave it there to set the table and defer to the council for further discussion on it.
In terms of the process, at this point, if there are a majority of the council members that would like to ask the town attorney to draft amendments to the procurement policy, that would be the process. And I think at the council meeting, we, because of the late hour, we indicated to Chair Vaswani, who commented on the policy, that it would be discussed at the work session. And what would happen in the work session is if a majority of you wish the town attorney to draft an amendment that reflects any of those concerns, otherwise it stays on the table for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt, the simple workaround you discussed with Ron, does that require an amendment with regards to town values?
Yeah, maybe Ron wants to speak to it, but essentially it would just be eliminating a section of that sentence. But Ron, maybe you can clarify and give a
Sure.
more detailed
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, so as Kumar Vaswani aptly pointed out, I mean, that there is case law that provides governments generally can't require declarations or pledges of allegiance from contractors. What was intended in the policy is that contractors abide by federal and state equal opportunity in employment and anti-discrimination provisions. And so we would just amend the language to clarify that, as we've done for years, contractors have to sign a contract, which includes the Maryland mandated EEO and anti-discrimination clause. So we just amend the language somewhat. That would require the council to approve that change, but it would be a slight one.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification, and I appreciate a town resident catching that issue with our original language. My thoughts in general with regards to the procurement policy, it's a new policy. We never had one before. This is a step forward. And in general, I think we should see how it plays out and develop some lessons learned for any other changes. But I'm in favor of making this one modification. And we'll go in reverse order. Robin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it sounds similar. What I'd suggest is that we actually put on the council agenda for a year from now, or at least next January, because that's when we approved it, review of the procurement policy as it's been implemented and see if we need to make changes at that time.
I will try and catch that in my minutes. Concur. Kabir?
Agree with Robin and with you on this
Okay.
front.
Shannon?
I don't have any comments.
Okay. Debbie?
I agree with Robin. I like that a lot, actually.
Okay. With that, here in this session, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, Mr. Manager, or Ron, but I believe we can, the council can direct you to prepare the updated or modified language, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And since it's just a resolution, a policy resolution, it can be introduced and adopted in the same meeting.
Oh, so when we meet in March, we can introduce and adopt it then? Okay.
Yes.
Do you need us to take a vote to ask you to prepare the language, or is our consensus here sufficient?
Consensus is fine. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to brief review of committee recommendations. There are some interesting ones here. Solar panel recommendation from the Environment Committee.
You can go over it quickly.
Yes, if you give a brief description, I believe it deals with
They've got.
town hall.
They want us to put solar panels in two places in the town. One is in the hill by the tennis courts. That's the one going down from Little Cumberland to the courts. It's at an angle already. And to place the panels on the ground or on supports in that area. And the other place is on the roof of the pool house. The solar panels, it's slightly complicated. The solar panels also, some of the savings from solar panels come from SRECs, which are solar renewable energy credits. And the question I had of our lawyer here is, are municipalities able to receive income from these SRECs? Do we know?
Would they be installed on the town hall, or?
They'll be installed, not on the town hall, no, on the town land, which is where the tennis courts are. It's on the hill, actually, going up to Little Cumberland from the tennis courts, and also on the pool house roof.
Okay.
And so can we receive income as a municipality from these?
Yeah, I don't see why not, but I'll look into that.
Okay, all right. There's one other complication, which is that because the DC rate for SREX is much higher than the Maryland rate for SREX, it turns out that the DC line runs along Dorset Avenue. So I am south of Dorset Avenue, therefore I get the high rate from my solar panels from DC. For the solar panels that are planned along Little Cumberland, then actually what they're asking is that we install the line and run it to Dorset so that they then captures the higher rate for SREX from DC. And so that's the total of the recommendations.
Thank you, Robin. Will the Environment Committee be providing I guess, a cost estimate and then an income estimate?
They can provide the cost estimate, certainly, and they can get some kind of income estimate. I've asked them to try to do that.
Super. Thank you very much. We've heard from you. Let's go around to Debbie. Do you have any questions for the Environment Committee on this recommendation?
I really wonder, if they can estimate, earnings, because it's really weather dependent. Got to have sun to pull this off. That's how I have solar panels and I totally recommend them. It's like amazing. And I'm happy to be on the DC line, let me tell you. But I don't know how we can really estimate that. But
well, I mean, you do an average. That's all you can do. An estimate is an estimate. That's it. It's never.
if it doesn't cost us a fortune to run that line, I think it's probably well worth it.
It doesn't cost a fortune to run the line. They'll give you the figures.
That's cool. I think we should go for it.
Thank you. Shannon, any? Sorry, are you finished, Debbie?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry.
Okay. Shannon?
I was just wondering if the solar panels on Little Cumberland would force the removal of any of those trees that are on that hill.
No, they wouldn't. In other words, they'd be placed with regard to the existing trees so that none of them would be affected.
And then does it
This is the Environment Committee, after all.
how would they lie? Like, are they flat to the surface? Like, I don't understand.
They need solar panels work best when they're at a roughly 30-35% angle, but the hill is at that angle, in fact, so they would be virtually flat to the ground because of that.
And what happens to the water runoff there? Like, it doesn't hit the tree. I mean, it doesn't hit the ground.
Well, the solar panels are raised slightly from the ground, so it will not affect the water runoff. It flows the way it flows. There's actually a drain pipe at the bottom that runs the water along the side of the tennis courts at the moment.
But I mean, just simply hitting the surface of the solar panels like changes that,
Well,
right?
yeah, right. Well, right. That water would run downhill in the same way and be captured in the same way.
And are there any concerns about how it looks, or will it be cumbersome for tennis players?
Tennis players do not see an objection, have not objected to it. They've been asked, and some residents of Little Cumberland have also been asked, and they're hardly visible from the street, actually. So they haven't really objected. Yeah.
They're highly visible or hardly?
No, they're hardly at all visible from the street because they're below ground from Little Cumberland.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah,
that's all my questions.
Thank you, Shannon. Kabir?
Yeah, just thanks to Matt and Bart for chasing this down. And I think they've been for a few months or weeks investigating these options, if I'm not mistaken, Matt. Just a quick clarification. When would we, if we move forward with this, when would it ideally go live, Matt? When would we have these panels installed and operational?
Matt, you know the answer.
I'm sorry, I keep muting myself and then forgetting to unmute. I don't know that we have a good estimate on that yet, in part because while they've been talking with the zoning folks at Montgomery County, it would still need to go through their review process and all that. So I don't think it would be something that would happen overnight.
Yeah, I think I asked the committee to put it in their FY23 budget request when they put in their budget request, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen in FY23. That's just signaling.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. And then will we have these figures by March? In terms of what it would take for us to install this and run the line, and we hope to have those figures by the
Well,
time we kick off.
Frankly, I'm not sure, because I
we would
think
need to have it by beginning or latest end of March, right?
Yeah, we're cutting it close, because this wouldn't be they're requesting that we put out an RFP, which would need to be, it would take a little bit of time to actually put that together. Then we would need some time in order for firms to put together a proposal for it, which
they could put in a rough estimate anyway, even though they're, rightly doing the RFP, they could still put in a number, basically a holding.
Yeah, I think we can pick this up separately. I think if we have a clear sense of timing, which I think we can come up with, then it would be reasonable to go with a rough estimate and put this in the budget, right? Because then we have a sense that we will deliver the next fiscal year. If not, we will need to rethink the approach here in terms of timing. But I'm excited. I'm glad this is happening. I'm glad it's happening at the pool. I know that Matt Zaft and other pool committee members were involved, and so I'm glad that it's moving forward.
If I may just add one question or point, and I don't know if now is the right time to bring this up or when it would actually be discussed in an open meeting, but one thing that I don't think we've looked at yet is to have the tennis committee consider it. And I only say that because if it's facing and tilted towards the tennis courts, it may cause a glare issue for people on the court. I don't know that for sure, but just perhaps something to consider.
I don't think it actually does, because they absorb the sun, they don't reflect the sun, they capture sun, of course.
Yeah, I don't think there will be a glare, but
okay.
You can run it. Yeah, I don't think there will be a glare issue.
But by all means, I mean, yes, of course.
Yeah, we can run it by them.
All right, great discussion. Thank you. And we'll be getting some more information then to enable us to formally consider it. Next time, just talk about pool opening. And this is just a preliminary discussion. Should mention to everyone that Debbie and I have been working together to put together an article for the town journal that just describes the pool committee's recommendation to open the pool in April, the beginning of April, and provide some information that we've previously discussed about the town budget and pool usage, the pool usage data that Shannon pulled together. And sort of on behalf of the council, we request that residents who have any particular feedback or comments on the proposal, provide them to the town manager so that we can formally consider them when we actually vote on the request. And I guess I'll turn over to Debbie, both as liaison to the pool committee and as co-author on the paper, to just provide a little bit more info.
The pool committee, thought it was a good idea to open the pool in April and, take from April 1st to take us all the way to, through the summer. One of the things that they weren't in a position to do, nor was I to be able to give them the information, was really what the actual cost would be. And I wonder if at the time we were able to give that actual cost, if they would have really recommended this. Because the cost is, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, it's upwards of $50,000 to open from April. And then I saw, I guess you wrote something that said that if we just do May, it's, I don't remember offhand, maybe you can tell me what it would cost. But I just wonder if the committee would really have recommended this had they understood the cost to the town. So, Matt, what was the cost for just for May?
Roughly $18,000.
Okay, and
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm so confused because like Matt, you had provided like for me something that said that it's basically about 54 grand a month to run the pool.
Shannon,
Uh,
yeah. I think he's talking,
that was, I believe that was American Pool for that was their proposal for opening in April.
Was 54 grand.
Right,
Like,
because
well, I'm confused because you gave me 54 and then Matt Zaft put in his thing that he would need 20 grand or 25 grand for the budget for April and 25 grand for May. But the numbers that you gave me, you know, we looked at like, what does it generally cost to operate the pool and looking everything all in, you know, including heating and the electricity and bills and utilities and, you know, the staffing, et cetera, and American Pool. And I thought that the number that you provided to run the pool was essentially around 54 grand a month.
If I can
So
jump in, I think this might help.
Yeah.
I believe the number that Matt provided was for about 6 to 7 weeks of the pool opening. It wasn't just for April, it was for April plus the portion of May that would be opening early.
But
Yep,
the
and maybe
pool
that's the
opened
source of
May 8th
confusion.
last year, right? So that's just one extra. So it
No,
would be,
that was an early opening. Our budget, the current budget does not support opening the pool on May 8th. That was a special early opening that the council voted on last year.
so when is our date budget wise to open the pool?
Yeah,
the pool would open May 20th.
Okay,
So you're
And-
still estimating it's 18,000 to open like May 1st from a May 20th opening?
Yeah, I think to open May 6th, it would be, I think I put in there, it's 14, for a little, you know, $14,500 for those 2 weeks. And I think also, Shannon, part of the difficulty in saying what does it cost per month is because it's dependent on the earlier you open or the earlier you extend it, it's going to be more expensive and going to drive up the average cost per month because you're using more gas. And so that's why it is a lot more expensive to open up in April than it is in May, even if you're just looking at it month by month, because the estimated gas costs would be are double. It was double last year for October versus what it was in September. And September is, you know, $2,000 versus $200 for August or July. And so basically once the weather starts to get cold, it gets a lot more expensive to keep the pool open. That's kind of the long and short of it.
and so, but like, you know, it seems like the number that I was given to open it earlier was like more like 54, 55. I mean, that's a big difference than 18 or 14. I mean, do we know?
I don't think you're getting it.
So maybe if I broke it down more easily, I think the management fees to open up in April 1st versus May 20th was about $39,000. So that's just the management. Then when you talk about WSSC bills, so water and sewer bills, electricity and gas for heating the pool, that's where for those 2 months combined, it's about $50,000. What I'm saying is to open up in April is about $18,000. So yeah, I mean,
You mean May?
I'm sorry, to open up at the beginning of May is about $18,000.
But if the management company is, oh, so are you taking the 39,000 then divided by week kind of? So like
Yeah.
if it's 5 weeks or 6 weeks?
That's one way to think about it, is really opening up at the beginning of May would be like opening up an additional 6 weeks early. So it's, about $8,500 a week. So that's why this proposal to open it up the first weekend of May is $14,000. It's a little bit less expensive per week because, like I said, there's a cheaper gas bill, mainly driven by that. There's a cheaper gas bill.
I mean, it comes down to budget, really, because we'd have to find $50,000 from our budget in order to open it. Do we have that money?
But also our statistics on pool usage don't really support opening this in April. If we take a look, and I think we should use those numbers. I think we should rely on them. I think they're pretty solid.
Absolutely.
Are we discussing the updated proposal for the May opening? Because that's what I have in my packet. Is this a discussion to put the May 6th 14K opening vote on the next meeting?
I was putting this in front of you to give you an option because my understanding of the feedback last month was, as Debbie said, opening in April because of the overall cost and the usage. The council as a whole decided, the juice wasn't worth the squeezing, so to speak. So some of the feedback was, what if we open a little bit earlier? And so that's why I'm coming back to you to say, oh, here's what it would cost for May, as an example.
All right.
You can still say, no, it's just not worth it. Let's let's just stick with May 20th like we always plan. But
can we advance the proposal to the March meeting to have the pool open on May 6th with the cost assumed to be $14,000? And the reasons why we're not supporting it to April 1st is that one, we're concerned about pool usage, and two, the costs run very much higher for April.
Makes sense.
And
And you're going to cover that in your town journal article, Debbie? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
Okay.
No, my question is this. When we discuss this in the March meeting, will we have a sense of that we can afford this or not? How will we know then that we have $14,500 to do this? Because that's really part of the equation, I would assume, right?
Matt, do we have $14,500 to do this?
Yeah. So, short answer is yes. In fact, as I've drafted the budget, I have done it assuming we would open it early, just because I had to make some assumptions.
This would be this year. This would be this year.
Remember, everybody, you're deciding tonight whether to put this item on the March agenda.
Right.
You're not deciding the merits of it. But if you decide to put it on the agenda, then you have to tell Matt which information you want, and then you want to have the vendor there also.
Right. So
you're not necessarily debating this tonight. You're just deciding if you're going to put it on the agenda.
thank you, Jeffrey. And that's why I was proposing that we put May 6th on the agenda as the opening date. We want Matt to give his best estimate of the cost for that. We think it's around 14,000 at the moment, and by all means, just have the vendor there to confirm costs.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Very good.
All right, sounds good.
So
We
wait a
didn't
minute, and
formally
that's
go around to
because-
everyone, but
So you're saying that you want to put May 6th as the proposed opening date because that's a change from the current contract, is that right?
yeah,
To be clear, to make sure that everybody, that's publicized. Okay, thank you, sorry.
okay. Thank you. We didn't really sort of go formally around, but I believe everyone contributed to the discussion, so we can move on to the next item. If I'm wrong, please cut in and speak up. Children's Playground, Parks and Natural Resources Committee recommendation. I'm not sure who's given that update.
I can do that too. I'm liaison to.
Thank you, Robin.
So, all right, yeah, this is a nice idea, actually. We have several places in town where something like this nature playground could be built. If you've seen them, they're made out of natural materials, often tree trunks. Sometimes hills are there too, that the tree trunks are built into steps so you can climb them. You might have a seesaw with a tree trunk and a plank going back and forth. But the idea is to have materials there so the kids can be creative themselves, and all the materials are natural. So they're all like wood usually. There's a chip surface so they don't damage themselves when they fall. And it's really for kids to use their imagination in nature to play with these materials and with each other, of course, using them. That's it. And there are a number in Montgomery County at the moment. And so this would be the idea to have one in town. We currently don't have access to even formal parks in town other than at the school, which of course is not available for much of the day. The nearest one without hitting major traffic is Norwood, which is really quite a long walk away and a drive away. The Willard Avenue Park, unfortunately, is either a very long, tortuous walk, or alternatively, you have to drive from the road to get to it. So we really don't have near highly accessible parks.
Thank you very much, Robin. Debbie?
What do I
are
think?
your thoughts or questions?
I wonder two things. It's a great idea. Wish I'd had it when my kids were little. But where would we put this? And what does it cost?
Okay, there are different places, so it hasn't been decided. One of them could be actually the area close to the tennis courts. It's beyond the parking lot. There's a grassy area there, and that's one possibility. Another possibility is if you know where the apiary was supposed to be built, where the fencing is for that, south of Dorset. That's another area that would be available. We could use some of Capello Park for it. That's another area that's available. So, I mean, there are multiple different spots that are potential there. I mean, we've got a lot of good land for this kind of thing in town. And the sound of children playing isn't the sound of pickleballs being hit. So it's a much easier thing to do. But there's been no decision as to where it would go. Costs, I mean, certainly an informal proposal costs will come from PNRC. It depends on whether you're using outside contractors or whether town employees are helping to build it, though.
Okay.
Shannon? What are your...
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's great in theory. It's just, you know, where it would go and how much it would cost and if we have the money for it. But, you know, I mean, I would say that as far as like, you know, back by the tennis courts, you're going to have the same, you know, I mean, it is kids playing, but at the same time, you know, tennis is supposed to be like a little bit quiet, and, you know, to have kids right there in that area, you know, might be something that, you know, people might not like the tennis committee. I have no idea. But I think that, you know, wherever it goes, we should definitely consult with all of the neighbors that are bordering it, you know, these places, and, you know, make sure
Yes.
that we have their buy-in before we start kind of going down the path. And then, you know, the other
Why would we ever
portion-
want to do that?
what?
Sorry, I'm teasing. I said, why would we ever want to do that? But
Right.
yes, of course. We should.
Right. But then, you know, the other part of that, and all of the proposed places, this whole meeting's been about like Little Cumberland, but you know, all of the parts about that also goes back to all of the parking issues. Like if it's on Capello Park, like Dorset, you really can't park. You really can't park on Cumberland. The tennis courts, if we have, you know, if we're going to have additional park back there, and pickleball or whatever, you know, there's just going to be more and more cars there too. I mean, there's just not a lot of space for extra automobiles and things like that for right now. That's all.
Well, I hope kids will be using their bikes rather than driving their cars when they're only 8 years old, but you never know. So,
Well, but I mean, you know, these parks are for kids who, you know, parents, you know, hopefully they'll walk over there too, you know, but a lot of people drive to parks. And if you live over on Greystone and you have to walk with your kid who's 3, you know, but not in
you
a
might use your
stroller,
car. Yes, you might.
you take a car. So, you know, it's definitely just another factor.
Yep. I think those are important factors to think about for us to consider. Thank you. Kabir?
Yeah, just a few things. So this was, coming out of the PNRC, I think it was discussed either in November or December. And I think the goal today is just to socialize it in the council and get people to surface these kinds of questions around location, noise, parking. I think sounds like there's general support for it. And I think the goal then is for the PNRC to try and put some meat around the proposal, maybe put some costs around it and so on. I don't know, Robin, whether we would want this to then, right? This is not going to be part of the council agenda in March.
It will meet no. I mean, I think
Yeah.
a budget request for it for 20.
Yeah. So there, yeah, exactly. I think it will probably play a feature in our budget conversations and in one way or the other.
Right.
If I may just quickly add to your point, Kabir, and also to Shannon's about getting input from residents, I think the ask here is in part tacit approval from the council for the PNRC to continue to look into this and flesh it with surveys and possibly getting quotes and getting feedback on potential locations, things like that.
Thank you.
Sounds like we got that today.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
Shannon and Debbie and others can confirm, but I think looks like there's tacit interest,
think there's-
approval, but
People are ready to consider it positively. Thank you all, and thank you to the Parks and Natural Resources Committee for putting together the presentation. It really is a nice document. Election rules, procedures, and possible charter amendments. Is this from the mayor or the manager to talk about?
We do have the chair of the Board of Supervisors of Elections here as well. I can give a very brief overview, and Ron might want to add something. One is very straightforward. It is the board's recommendations for this upcoming year's election procedures. And so if that were to move ahead, that would be considered at the March council agenda. And then the second item with the charter amendments, which I don't think you have before you, because I think timing wise, it would not go into effect until after this next election anyway. And there's some potential upcoming legislation that may impact how we want to approach it timing wise. But that's my very high level summary for you.
So I think before you turn it over to the chair of the Board of Supervisors of Elections, I think that the reason why the council president put this item on the work session agenda was whether or not you're going to put on the council agenda in March any required introductions for the purpose of to deal with this year's election. But I think a lot has happened since then. Because I think the board met.
Yes, yeah, I can add, Mr. Mayor, that
They conferred with Ron. Yeah.
the Board of Supervisors will be presenting the proposed election plan for the upcoming election, which I believe will be, a recommendation to have a election by mail. The board also discussed several charter amendments, and initially we thought about perhaps trying to get one charter amendment done quickly, because we noted that the town charter currently provides that someone can vote by mail, absentee ballot, if they are unable to vote in person. But Maryland law provides that municipalities have to offer no fault absentee voting. You don't need a reason to vote by mail. And the town wouldn't enforce a requirement that someone demonstrate that they're not available to vote in person. But just to avoid confusion, we thought it would be good to clear that up. But then through the discussions of the upcoming election plan and possible future plans that may involve voting by mail, we identified, well, the Board of Supervisors identified some other charter amendments that might be necessary. So I do think it makes economic sense to do them all at once, because we do have to publish notice in the newspaper, and that can be a pretty expensive ordeal. As Matt noted, there's also pending state legislation to allow us to publish charter amendments in newsletters rather than paying a newspaper of general circulation like the Washington Post to publish our charter amendments in their legal notice section, which can be $900 and upwards.
And nobody reads it.
Yeah, fair point.
But wait a minute.
Given all that, we'll likely.
I thought the last time you were able to put the notice very cheaply in the Jewish Week, which was like pennies.
Well, I know we use the Bethesda Sentinel, but they're now out of print. Matt, have we used the Jewish newspaper?
I think that a lot of organizations and municipalities use the Jewish. I think it qualifies.
What's it called, Mr. Mayor?
The Jewish Week, and I think I thought you did it with some years ago.
I know from MML that a number of the municipalities have been complaining about this because of the cost of the post, and they've been the force behind the legislation that's actually now in the state.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Delegate Solomon's bill was spearheaded by Andy Harney at Section 3, and I've provided comments to the Delegate Solomon. Hopefully it passes, because as Councilmember Barr said, I mean, at a minimum, I don't know how reasonable it is to expect town residents to look in the legal section of the Washington Post for charter amendment notices. Folks are going to look at our newsletter.
What, just to clarify, what are we discussing right now?
Sorry, that was more information than you needed.
No. I like information.
An election plan for your approval at the March meeting.
Okay, awesome. And just when is the election date again?
First Tuesday in May.
First Tuesday in May. Okay, thank you.
It says election day will be May 24th.
May 24th. Okay.
May 24th.
I'm sorry.
And
Tuesday, May
confusing
24th.
clients.
Yeah,
great.
I believe that's part of the election procedures is establishing the election day, because our charter says that it's either the first Tuesday in May or another date set by the election Board of Supervisors of Elections, rather.
So all of that will be presented at the next council meeting.
Correct.
Great. Thank
Great.
you.
If there's nothing else to discuss on this topic, can we move on to the next topic?
Did you want I did just want to note that the board chair is here. Do you want her to speak, or are we good and she'll present it at the March meeting?
I think we're good. I don't want to offend anyone who wants to speak to us though, but we're good. We're looking forward to the presentation and voting on it in March. We're just very behind in our schedule. River Road is growth corridor. Debbie, can you just briefly summarize this?
Briefly, River Road has been designated a growth corridor in Thrive 2050. And the River Road Coalition has asked to take it out as a growth corridor for a lot of reasons. We don't have the major transport that one would have there. There isn't major businesses, like let's say think Bethesda, if what we're being asked to do is sign on to the letter supporting removing this. And this is only a win-win for us. One of the things, and Jeffrey, maybe you can tell me if I'm right about this. I think by not having a growth corridor, that they can't then build apartment buildings into our neighborhood from 500 feet from River Road. Am I right about that?
Yes, but remember, this is a no-brainer because this is just a request to the council to delete this when they vote on Thrive, which might not even be until after the election this year in June.
We
So
should sign on to this.
I strongly advise the council to support Debbie's request.
It really is a no-brainer.
Without getting into
Right.
there's no reason to get into to waste time getting into particulars.
Right.
Right. So, and it's laid out in the letter that we'd be signing on to. And I think we can discuss and vote on it at the March meeting. So
Okay.
unless somebody has any particular questions or comments they wish to raise now.
I'll do this very quickly. Andrew Friedson mentioned this in his talk. Jeffrey was there too. The council's already had a go at this and they've already decided to cut it back to just to the Beltway, but it's still too far going to the Beltway, so we still need a letter.
Well, no,
Perfect.
Andrew's planning to introduce an amendment and he thinks he has the votes, but it needs community public support, especially from us.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Debbie, for spearheading that. Chevy Chase Farm Women's Market Investment. This is another support, Mr. Mayor.
Well, this comes from the mayor of Chevy Chase and council member Irene Lane. And the town of Chevy Chase has designated some of their ARPA funds towards a park near the Farm Women's Market in that development. The county executive is not putting this in his capital budget this year, but the council can amend it. And again, to council member Barr's point, County Councilmember Friedson is supportive of this, is working on this. And given the fact that that park would be used by Somerset residents, it's right up the street, it's going to be a beautiful park. I urge the council to endorse the town of Chevy Chase's letter.
I don't want to carry on too much about this, but I think what people need to know is where this park is going is essentially the parking lot that's there. They're going to
Yep.
remove that parking lot. They're going to build an underground garage. I've tried to get pricing on that. What would it cost us to park there? Because right now it's easy and fairly cheap. They don't know. So it's going to be this whole revitalization. And I think we should support Chevy Chase because we should. How's that?
Excellent.
I'm too tired to go on any more than that.
Thank you, Debbie.
Jeffrey, when is the, oh, sorry. I
That's
didn't
fine.
mean to jump the line.
It'll be during the budget.
Got it.
It'll be during the county council's budget deliberations.
Got it.
So the earlier they get our support, the better. This is Andrew Friedson is requesting support from all of the surrounding citizens associations and municipalities, because that gives him more strength, especially with the at-large council members.
Yes, we should support it. We should recommend that the county council add it into the capital budget. And it's a surprise that the county executive did not do so, since he's in favor of the park.
Okay. Thank you all. Great discussion, and we'll look forward to considering that, voting on it in March. I believe the last item, if we have a chance, maybe we can get to another topic that Shannon was interested in presenting, but building height. This is a topic that came up after one of the recent construction projects in the town. We noted that we don't have There's no special town regulation constraint on height. The county is 35 feet and the county's rules do not include things like elevator structures and all the railing and stuff. So a house can actually go quite above 35 feet.
I had I had one passing thought. If we wanted to do something like parallel to our established building line for setbacks, except do it for heights instead. Might be
Exactly. So I think the question here is, if we share a concern about heights or potential height growth in Somerset, what is the path to take, and how do we go about pursuing that path? Like we had the Stormwater Management Committee provide recommended language to address stormwater. We came up with our own language, working with the town attorney to address perturbances from buildings and variances. Do folks have any thoughts on how to perhaps effectively proceed on building height?
Steve,
and
I
Robin?
think,
Oh, Kabir.
sorry to jump the line. I think this is an important issue, and I'm wondering if we can tackle this with a fresh mind.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, because I do think this is important, and I find myself hitting the end of my line today. So if we can tackle it at our next work session, that would be awesome. And I think it's an important one.
Well said. I'm glad we had a chance to raise it so people can start to think about it offline, and we'll put it on the working session for next month. And since we're only 5 minutes over, and recognizing the tiredness of not just Kabir, but other council members, Shannon, do you want to just briefly raise that topic you sent me an email on?
Yes, I'll be very fast. So the Public Safety Committee had its first meeting with Kumar as the new committee chair, and a couple topics were discussed. One was really, let's see, following up from our January 20th hearing with letters requesting just additional information from Chief Goldstein and the Bethesda Fire Department Chief Esch. And so Kumar said that he would be willing to write those letters out. And so I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions on that before he were to kind of start on that.
I do not. Thank you for the update.
And then
anybody else?
Yeah, I have a very quick thing too. Al Carr, who's the state House delegate for neighboring town of Chevy Chase, has a bill that Susan Lee is co-sponsoring in the Senate to allow municipalities to own their own streetlights. And this is the second time he's tried to get the bill through, and he's looking for letters of support from municipalities. It's sort of, it is a kind of good thing for us, but the question is there enthusiasm among us to generate a letter quickly because he wants it kind of by tomorrow, because that's when it goes to the House. So any thoughts on that?
Well,
well,
we want to own our own streetlights.
Because Pepco has been dragging its feet terribly on updates to streetlights, especially LED lights.
so also with that, that just reminded me. So the Public Safety Committee is proposing, Matt is working on some additional Pepco street lighting pricing right now. And we are working to get that included as part of the budget for next year. And so that big expense will be coming through. I don't know how that impacts, what you're talking about, Robin, but
it's sort of indirectly related. The issue here is it gives competition to Pepco, which makes them more likely to make a deal, basically.
who would write that letter?
Oh, well, our mayor would, of course.
I would suggest, okay, so I don't
share
think
a
the
sample
council has enough information to
Right.
make a decision on this, but just so you know, in the past, I have personally supported that legislation. And if there is a hearing coming up, I would suggest that Councilmember Barr sign up to testify on his own, or we can each send individual letters. But in terms of the council making a group decision, I don't think you have enough information about it to do that.
Sure.
And you don't really want to do it at a work session.
Robin, can we pick it up at the next work session?
Well, you can do. It might be too late for the hearing, but I mean, I'll certainly.
That's fine. There'll be many shots at this issue, as you know.
I
And I
suspect you're
also
right
wonder
here.
whether does the MML Legislative Committee, have they endorsed that?
They have not endorsed it yet, no.
Yeah.
I mean, they may yet, they haven't endorsed it yet.
Right.
A net positive, it'll be structurally net positive for our town if we can figure this out. But I think we will have many shots at this, and we should pick it up in future sessions.
You know, he's
Yes.
introduced that almost every year, and sadly, I don't think he has the support in the legislature.
PEPCO will oppose it, yes.
Well, we can end the sentence right there. They're highly influential.
We'll add it I'll put it on our working session for next month so we can deliberate on this a little bit further. But this is a bit of a sidetrack from what the update Shannon was giving us. Are there any questions or comments specifically on what the Public Safety Committee is working on? And maybe there are none. I just want to make sure folks had a chance.
Can we get, I'm a bit distracted, admittedly. Is it possible to get it in a written sort of quick update from Mr. Vaswani or from the Public Safety Committee? Or is it, if it's an action item, to play it into in a future meeting?
I think it's just an update, not an action item. Shannon,
Okay.
can you just send something? Can you send something to the manager to distribute to the council?
Sure. I'll just send Kumar's email about it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I recommend we adjourn unless somebody has any other questions or comments. Thank you for hanging in there. We
Second that we adjourn, move.
I third.
got through a lot.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you for being
Happy
all of our
Valentine's Day,
collective
everyone.
Valentines.
Oh yeah,
tonight.
happy Valentine's
Valentine's Day, everybody.
Woo-hoo. Only one person is wearing red. Okay. Bye, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Me.
Good job, Debbie. Bye.